And good evening, and welcome to Training Tuesday, Dirty Girls. We are here. It is another Tuesday night, and it is another evening of training. So, tonight we're going to talk about making decisions and how we can struggle sometimes with making decisions, and there's a variety of reasons why we might be struggling. So, I want you to think about the last time you had to make a difficult decision. Like, what was that choice and what made it difficult? Because knowing those two things might determine the strategy you decide to use in your decision making process, right? So you might have a decision about whether you take a new job or you don't take it, or whether you go after a promotion or you ask for a raise or you don't. Whether you're buying a house or buying a car, what kind of car, what house, what neighborhood, what's your price range. All kinds of choices and decisions, right, that we're making all the time in our lives. And we find that sometimes we get stuck in the decision-making process. And there can be a variety of reasons why, right? Decisions are hardest when we have multiple viable options, right? When we have a couple of options and they all seem like that could work, or that could work, or that could work. And by viable, I mean you can actually do them, like options that you can actually follow through on, right? So, for example, I do not have an option right now of buying a $4 million home. I don't. It's not in my budget. I do have a decision about buying a home, and I have a decision about what kind of home and how big and what is my budget and where I want it to be and all of that stuff. So those are viable decisions I have to make. But going as far as today, buying a $4 or $10 million home, not a viable decision, okay? So we focus on the viable choices because those are the real choices we have to make, right? The real decisions we have to make. And these choices are hard. They're hard. So let's talk a little bit about why they're hard. And before I dive into why they're hard, going to say hello, good evening. Welcome to everybody who's here tonight. I'd love for you to say hello in the chat, just like Charlotte did. Hey, Charlotte, how are you? Say hello, let everybody know where you're from. Ask questions, leave your comments, share your stories. That's what the chat is for keeping this as interactive as possible. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Natalie Hahn. I am your principal coach and CEO of Dirty Girls Consulting, and I'm very happy you're here tonight in our group, Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women. This is where every Tuesday night we tackle questions around building our confidence, accelerating our careers, asking for that promotion, asking for that raise, going after that new job, and really building and creating the life that you want to have. And that's what it's all about. And making decisions is a big part of that process, which is why tonight we are talking about making decisions. Now, why can sometimes making decisions be hard, right? Even for those of us who are really decisive, right? We get stuck sometimes making a decision. We get trapped. All kinds of reasons why this happens, right? We have grown up with a whole bunch of preconditioning, and you've heard me talk about this before. The patterns that we're raised with have us thinking a certain way, believing certain things, right? We get these limiting beliefs. And I see that Joyce wrote, hey Joyce, oh, I don't know why I'm cutting out. My internet signal theoretically looks good on this side. If for everybody else, if you're having problems hearing me or seeing me, let me know, and we'll see if we can figure something out. So Charlotte, what did you say? My budget consists of, I have to put on my reading glasses to read comments, my friends. Gas, an appointment right now, finally getting out of it. Yes. See, so we have very real choices and very real parameters around how we make those choices. And what can make it hard, right, are these limiting beliefs that we have that we can only do things a certain way, or that things only should be done a certain way. We have these gremlins running around in our head saying we can't do these other things, right? They run our fear-based programs where we think we can't do it that way, or we shouldn't do it that way, or it's never going to work out, and it convinces us that our doubts and our objections are real, when in fact It's just the fear of the gremlin in our head because we haven't done it that way before, or we haven't thought about it that way before. So a lot of these prejudices that we have about decisions that we make are based on our past experience. They're based on assumptions that we have on about how we think things will go if we do it, or how we think they'll go if we don't do it, right? It can go either way. Oh, do you have some weather, Joyce? That could be something. I don't have weather here. We have beautiful sunny skies here tonight. So, but keep me posted. Like I said, anybody else, if you're experiencing that I'm cutting in and out a lot, I can try to figure out if there's something going on my end here. So what happens with, just getting back to this, what happens with the patterns when we're making decisions is we get locked into decision-making patterns, right? We get into a situation and we almost go on autopilot for how we make a decision. Now, when we come up to a decision that rubs against a value or rubs against something that we really want, but it rubs against it, then we have a dilemma. Because then we're worried about what's the right thing to do. What's the right thing? What should I be doing? That's the question that we ask ourselves, right? So the first thing I want you to think about when you think about a decision you've had to make where you felt stuck, whether it's you have to make a choice, like one of the examples I gave in the promo was, I had to make a choice between two of my team members and promoting one over the other. Well, there were all kinds of repercussions I was trying to think through in promoting one over the other. How would it impact the team? How would it impact each individual? What was it going to look like for me depending on who I chose? What was it going to mean for our future, the team, and how we were growing our team and management? All kinds of things that kept me kind of frozen in this hamster wheel for a while so that I wasn't making a choice nearly as quickly as I should have. Spent a lot of time swirling in my head, worrying over all the details because I couldn't step back and get clear on the decision. Other times we have a decision to make because we think we want something or we don't want something, and it's rubbing against a value of ours. And now we feel like we have to say yes. This happens more often when we feel like we have to say yes, but something in us really wants to say no. And we don't get clear on what that is. And that's typically when we're rubbing against a value. So the first thing to decide, the first thing to think about, if you're stuck in a dilemma, you're trying to make a decision and you're feeling trapped around that decision, right? You're feeling stuck. Is this decision a moral issue? Is it a question of morals or values? Because right or wrong, right, making the right decision or making the wrong decision only comes into play when it rubs against your morals and your values. Otherwise, if it's not a moral decision, we're looking at options. All right, there's very little right or wrong involved, but oftentimes we lock into right or wrong as a way that we think it's going to help guide us when really it keeps us stuck. Because right or wrong isn't the right question to ask, right? So before we sink into the swirl of is it right, is it wrong, right? Am I a good person, am I a bad person? You need to step back and ask yourself, is this a moral issue? Is the decision I'm trying to make a moral issue? And if it's not, take it off the table. So it's not a moral issue if you apply for a job. It's not a moral issue if you go ask for a raise. It's not a moral issue if you don't live in your favorite city or you don't live in the kind of house that you want. Now, those are all personal preference issues for sure, but they're not moral issues, okay? They're not necessarily value issues. So you have to get a little clear on whether this is rubbing against your values and your morals or whether this is a matter of preference. So I'm just taking a look here. Oh, am I still cutting in and out for you guys? I wish I knew what the reason was for that. Everything I'm looking at here says I have a full signal. All right, can you guys let me know in the chat, are you able to hear me and see me okay now, or is this a continuing issue? Because if it's a continuing issue, I might try to pop out and pop back in. If it's just infrequent, but overall my connection seems steady, we're just going to keep on going. So let me know about that. So let's say, for example, what might be a moral issue. I'm just going to keep going until you guys tell me you can't hear me. Um, Going back to whether it's a moral issue or not. So let's say, for example, you have a job offer, and it's a great job. It's a job that you want. It moves you forward in your career. However, they want you to move out of state. Now, those are not moral issues, right? You've got a job. You've got to decide if you want to go forward in that direction of your career. You've got a place to go. You have to decide if that's a place that you want to live. Now, generally speaking, those are not moral issues, right? Those are personal preference issues. So there's a personal preference decision. Now, when does it become a moral issue? Well, it might be a moral issue if, for example, or a values issue, for example, you belong to the LGBTQ community. And the job that you are looking at accepting wants to send you to Florida, because I've seen this discussion going on lately, right? And you have to decide as someone is a member of that community, do you want to live in a state like Florida that is currently creating and passing laws, state laws, that work against your group? That might be a moral issue. That might be a values issue that you have to take a deeper look at. But otherwise, if it's not about your values and it's not about your alignment with your core, then take right or wrong off the table and move on. Okay, so what do we have here? Rose's connection is fine. Random lines cutting through the screen. Well, that stinks, guys. So my video quality isn't so great. I apologize for that. We'll see if we can boost that next time. If you guys can hear me okay, I'll keep on going, but let me know if it gets worse. And thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. And by the way, hello, Rose. Hello, Sue. It's good to see you guys here as well tonight. Okay, let's take that example of the new job and moving out of state. And let's just say we all have that problem tonight. We all have the problem tonight that we were offered this great new job and we have to move out of state if we're going to take it. So how do you decide? Think of all the choices you have to make, right, to decide. Do you want to live in that state? What's the cost of living difference? What would the housing situation be? Does the job have a career trajectory that works for you? Is it truly getting you in the direction you want to go? Does it pay you more? Do you know the people you're going to work with? Is there a benefit there? If you have kids, do they need schools? If you have a partner, does your partner need to have a job? Are there health considerations, right? That living in certain climates maybe doesn't work for you, or living among certain allergens. What happens when there's an emergency? If you're moving out of state and, for example, away from your family, how do you handle if it's an emergency? Now, none of these are choices, right, or decisions that you make are insurmountable necessarily. But they are choices we have to make, right? We have to be thinking about that. So I want you guys to tell me in the chat, what is your key strategy when it comes to making a decision and you feel stuck? What do you do? What's your go-to action of you're sitting down, you're considering a change of job. All right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to put your answers in the chat. You've just been offered a great job. It is 3 states away from wherever you are. It is 3 states away. So let's just say on average, it's probably a 2 to 3 hour flight or a 10 to 15 hour car drive. What do you do to make the choice of whether you're going to take that job or not? What's your decision process look like? Do you have one? So put for me in the chat what you guys do when you're faced with that kind of decision. How do you decide? So I'll start with the most common strategy I hear. The most common strategy I hear is what? Make a list. Make your pros and cons list. This is not a bad place to start. What I'm going to give you tonight is not like a single magic pill for how to make a decision and step into leading and owning your life. Because there's actually a couple of strategies for how you can make a decision. And what you've got to do is tap into the one that fits for the kind of decision you're making and that you're comfortable with. So, and there we go. Sue creates a pro and con list. Awesome. So Sue, work with me here, okay? So you're creating a pro and con list. What I like about the pro and con list is that it gives you clarity. When we start thinking about the pros and cons, right, we start thinking about all the good and all the bad. So we start digging in a little bit, right, to all the different facets of this decision we're making. So pros might be, it's an exciting new job, it's in a cool new city, it has great future potential for my career. But the cons might be, it's far away from my family. I don't know the school system there. It might not be good for my kids. I don't know what the housing situation is there. Will I be able to find a place, right? The cons might be more of the unknowns, but there might be some real cons. Like it's the same town as my arch nemesis from middle school, right? Whatever it is. The pro and con list is a great way of getting some clarity. It doesn't always help you make the decision though, right? Because what happens if your pros and cons are fairly equal? Right? And we can get stuck that way. So one thing I would recommend you do if you go to the pro and con list is scale it. And Sue knows this because she's heard me ask this question a ton of times. But for every point that's on your pro list and your con list, I want you to scale it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being not really important at all, and 10 being very important to me. Now you have weighted the pros and you've weighted the cons, and you have a much clearer way of looking at which is the heavier column, right? Is it the pros or the cons? I actually did this a couple of weeks ago with a client who was debating about staying where she was, where she is living with roommates, or moving out on her own and getting her own place. And she had a lot of benefits to staying where she was. And then there were benefits to moving out. So it was tough. She was caught in the swirl of what's the right thing to do. And we had to step back and say, not a moral decision, so there's no wrong answer here. It really is what's right for me to do. What do I want? When we weighted her answers, scale of 1 to 10, how important is it in terms of the location? How important is it in terms of the privacy that you have? How important is it in terms of the time spent with certain people and things like, we just started weighting down all the elements that were on our pro and our con list, and it was crystal clear at the end of it that the pros for moving out were much, much higher than the pros for staying. And the cons for moving out weren't any heavier weighted than the cons for staying. So that washed out. But it became much clearer what was important to her, where she needed to be. So if you're going to use the pro and con list, but you're still feeling stuck, one tool to use is to weight it, right? To weight the list. So what do we have here? We have Charlotte uses meditation. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Rose goes to friends. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Sue, that happened to me. Was that the getting stuck part? That you do the pro and con list and you're like, this actually didn't, it got me clear on all the issues, but it didn't actually get me clear to making a decision, right? And Joyce, how stable the situation so I don't wind up unemployed in Stray City. And I made a move like that. That was one of the things on my con list was I go to this city, it does not have a good job market. Am I willing to take that risk? Am I willing to go, and if this job doesn't work out, realize I'll either be struggling to find a job or I may have to move again. I actually have made that decision. So that I am very familiar with. Okay, so yeah, you got stuck. Awesome. All right, guys, so the next thing we typically do, right, we do the pro and con list. I'm just going to kind of go in order of what we typically do when we're stuck. And one or two of these might fall out of order a bit for you and your process, but this is how it came to me. So first was the pro and con list. Second, we do what? Like Charlotte said, and like Rose said, we go to our trusted advisors. We go talk to friends and family. Now, the benefit of talking to friends and family and mentors and somebody that we trust is that we get new perspectives. Right? We get alternate perspectives, something we hadn't thought of before, or a new way of thinking about something that opens the door for different options. Right? That can be really beneficial in helping us figure out, is this really the right thing for me? for me, not the right thing, because we're not talking about right and wrong moral decisions right now. We're talking about just making a decision. So what is the right thing for me to do right now? Given the scenario of, do I accept a job out of town or not? The challenge, though, with sometimes inviting friends and family is that it can add to our confusion, because sometimes what starts getting weighed in is other people's opinions. And you guys know how I feel about the OPP. Other people's opinions is something we have to detach from. We have to find a way to take their advice, take their guidance, put it in perspective for ourselves, and let it go. Because we can get confused then, starting to say, oh, but my mother really wanted me to do this. But my cousin says this is actually what I need to be thinking about. And we start getting more concerned about people pleasing than we do about making the decision based on what we want. So using our friends and family and our trusted network to help give us some guidance and some new perspective and new ideas is fantastic, and we should definitely do it. But understand that it can add to our layers of confusion if we find ourselves getting caught in, now we have to make them happy. Or they'll feel like I didn't value their opinion when I decided to go the other way, right? We get caught in this trap of trying to please people. Something that can help you step back a little bit from this, from whether it's other people's opinion or from whether it's that pro and con list, is to go a level deeper. And what I would invite you to do there, and we talked about this in an earlier training, is worst case scenario planning. Work out your worst case scenarios. What are they? If you choose option A, take the new job, move to the new city, what are all the things that can go wrong? And if those things go wrong, what are you going to do about it? So it's, what's the worst case scenario and what's my contingency plan if that happens? And then you flip it over. Okay, I don't take the job, I stay put. Worst case scenario planning. What does that mean? And what is my contingency plan? So the cool thing about this is it can challenge. When we do the worst case scenario planning, it can challenge our limiting beliefs. It can challenge the way we typically think about something, because suddenly we're looking at a choice and going, you know what? It's not so impossible. It's not so bad. It's not as hard as my gremlin made it seem. Now that I'm breaking it down into this is what the fear is, this is what that worst case scenario is, what would I do? I had a conversation with a client, this is about a month ago, where her worst case scenario was she was going to get fired. Absolute worst case scenario was she was going to get fired. So the next question was, what do you do? What happens when the boss calls you in the office and says, I'm sorry, we have to let you go? And she started to laugh. She goes, I would feel so relieved. I would take a few days off and then I just start job hunting and find something else. And suddenly, worst case scenario, not so scary. So worst case scenario planning can help you dig a little bit deeper into what's driving your fear, can help you create the contingency plan for if that were to happen. And if you know a little bit around your contingency planning, it might make you feel more comfortable about the decisions you might make. Or it might help you draw a harder line saying, oh yeah, that's just a no-go. That, and here's my contingency plan, and you know what, not even my contingency plan is acceptable. Maybe that's a no-go then. Maybe you have your answer. This exercise is a reality check, and it can help you narrow the decision gap. Now, if you're still stuck, there's another way to look at this. So, I see Rose said, setting some boundaries in place prior to, yes, that's a really important point, Rose. I'm glad you brought that up. When we consult friends and family and mentors and anybody else, having some clear boundaries in place is incredibly helpful. And we should have these boundaries in place anyway, but especially if you're going to someone and saying, listen, I want to bounce something off you. Framing it with, I'm trying to make a hard decision. I'm trying to do what's right for me. I would love your thoughts on this to include in my decision-making process. And what you're doing when you say that is you're setting the stage for, I want your input. You're not making the decision for me. right? So I would love to get your thoughts on this choice that I have to make. Your experience, your feedback would be very valuable as I go through my decision making process, right? So framing that out for whoever you're going to can be a very good way to set a boundary so that they know right off the bat they're not telling you what to do. And they may or may not. You may or may not take their advice. And hey, Miss Katie, it's good to see you. Thank you for popping in and saying hi. All right, if after all of these things we are still stuck, another tool you can try is the 5-5-5 rule. I use this lens a lot with my clients when they're actually trying to figure out like what to do with their day. When their stuckness is in, I have all these competing priorities. I only have 30 minutes. What am I going to do next? I have people pulling at me in different directions, right? How do I manage this? So the 5-5-5 rule is this decision, right? The choice you make. How much does that choice matter in 5 days, in 5 months, and in 5 years? Give yourself some perspective around the impact of this decision. Does this decision have an immediate impact that as soon as you make it within the next 5 minutes to 5 days, things are going to blow up? Is the impact of this decision a little bit more midterm, like 5 months from now, 6-8 months, a year from now, it's going to matter? Or could this decision have an impact going out as far as 5 years? That gives you a sense of the magnitude of the decision, and therefore, how much time do you spend spinning your wheels on it? Because I guarantee you we spend an awful lot of time spinning our wheels on decisions that have zero impact beyond the next 5 minutes, much less 5 days. We worry to death. That's part of our preconditioned patterning, right? Because we're so worried about pleasing other people. We are so focused on doing things the way we're used to doing them, that when something comes in and offers us something else, something different, something unfamiliar, our gremlin kicks in and we get nervous, we get anxious. So try the 5-5-5 lens if you still find yourself being stuck, to just give yourself some perspective of how big a decision is this really? So should I just make this decision and move on, or should I be spending a little bit more time with it? Right? So for my clients, we've used this mostly with their calendaring, right? With their scheduling. Is it more important to finish this project deadline? Or is it more important to go spend 40 minutes at the gym? Right? On the surface, some of you may immediately say, finish the deadline, get it out of the way. And others may say, I got to go to the gym, the project will wait. When you start asking yourself the question, what matters in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, right? 5 months, 5 years, you can start putting in perspective what matters most to you so that you can make a choice. This gives you a better sense of control over your priorities, over your time, over how you're choosing to build your life. So, not all decisions will fall into the 5-5-5 framework, however. So there's another option. So, hey, Jackie, it's good to see you. Glad you joined us tonight. So this is the one that Charlotte mentioned earlier, which is listening to yourself, tapping into your intuition. You know yourself best. You just don't always listen to yourself. So the question, I guess, is can your intuition really help you? Some people say, absolutely, you should always go with your gut. And other people say, your gut is so unreliable, don't do it. What I think our gut or intuition, right, that inner voice that we have, what I think that can tell us the most is, what do we want? What do we really want? When we're in that, I don't know stage, all things being equal and everybody wants something different from me, right? And we're getting confused. What settling in and listening to ourselves can do is tell us what we really want in the situation. What would make us happy? You know, sometimes you're going through a process and you're making a decision, and on the surface it seems like the right choice. In fact, I know we've been talking about, like, you take the job do you take the job out of state and do you move or not? Well, it could be that taking the job out of state and moving checks all the boxes for everything you want in your career. It seems like a brilliant option. But if there's something in you that just doesn't feel 100% comfortable pulling that trigger, Spend a little time to figure out what you really want. What you may find is that because for a long time your vision was this career path, that you've just stayed that course without actually reevaluating, is that really where I want to go? If I don't get there, how will I feel? What is it that's truly important to me in my life right now, right? So here's what I want you to do. To tap into your intuition, this gives you more information. It can sometimes help you make the decision, and sometimes it just gives you more information about why you're struggling with the decision and helps you figure out where you want to go next. So here's what I want you to do when you're struggling with the decision and it's time to tap into what do you want in all this. I want you to get quiet. I want you to take deep, slow breaths. So I want you to be very conscious of breathing in and breathing out. If it helps you to count, count. But just be conscious of where you're sitting, relaxing, and breathing. And the first thing you do is picture your ideal future. Not your realistic future, not the most practical future, not what's happening next week or tomorrow, but I want you to project in your mind, what is the ideal life I'm working towards? What is the ideal future I want to build? Is it a cottage in the woods? Is it a bungalow at the beach? Is it a high-rise in the city? Maybe it's none of those things. Maybe it's traveling. Maybe it's this particular job title, this particular salary, whatever it is that is your ideal future. That's what I want you to soak into. And you just need to do it for a minute or two, but you need to feel it. The ideal. Where do I want my life to go? What do I want my life to feel like? Picture it, sit in it. You don't have to be specific about the job or the city. It's about the feeling you want to have. It's the general where. Now, once you've put yourself there, now I want you to turn back to the question. Do I take the job and do I move out of state? But the question is, does taking this job and moving out of state help me grow? Does it help me move in the direction I want to go? Does taking this job and moving out of state get me closer to this future that I want? Does taking this job and moving out of state help me expand myself, expand my life? Does it add more? Does it bring more? Any choice that helps us grow, expand, add, and move closer to that future ideal vision probably feels really scary. And it should. And it should. Because if you've envisioned your ideal future properly, it's probably a little bit scary to think, can I do this? Can I get there? Well, you can't if you don't start making decisions in alignment with that future. So, when we get scared, our gremlin brain kicks in and we start rationalizing all the reasons why it's a bad idea. That's why I want you to spend time, get quiet, and get really clear on what you want so that we can push the gremlin aside and say, I get that you're scared, but this choice, scary as it is, gets me a little bit closer to where I really want to be, to being the person, the leader, the whomever you are that you want to be. If you're not moving forward because of fear, then you're not truly visualizing what it is you want and believing you can have it. And we can't move towards a goal that we can't see. We have to see it and believe it for us to move towards it. The flip side, though, is that meditation can get you really clear on whether there's a true obstacle or not. There could be a real obstacle in your path. I think it was Joyce that you said that, like you literally can't consider moving right now. You have an obstacle that says, right now, can't do this, not even entertaining it. And that's perfect. That's a choice, right? That's a perfectly fine choice when you're clear on what the obstacle is and that it's a real obstacle. And sometimes getting clear in yourself, right? Whether it's meditating, whether it's just quiet thinking and breathing and journaling, however you meditate. The whole point of meditation is opening and expanding and clearing the mind so that you can see the options and you can see the opportunities as well as the obstacles. Now, the last thing I want to leave you with is the tip from Colin Powell. So, and then Rose, you saw a quote that says, don't make a permanent decision based on temporary feeling. Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I'm saying, right, meditating and getting clear on what you want and all the other tactics we've talked about tonight, they're all pieces that can help you get a full picture of where you're at, where you want to go, and what is the best choice you can make in the moment that you're in. And that's the important part. And that's actually why, that's a good lead in, Rose. Thank you for that. That's exactly why this little tactic from Colin Powell is a good one. He had a 40-70 rule. Colin Powell's 40-70 rule was that you need at least 40% of the information to make a good decision. 40%. If you didn't have at least 40% of necessary information about a thing, then you were really making more of a blind guess, shot in the dark. But 40% of information gives you enough to consider, to extrapolate, to make a plan. If you wait until you have over 70% of the information, you've waited too long. So either you've missed your opportunity, or you have spent so much time stalling and nitpicking that you've lost yourself in the swirl of stuff that doesn't really matter. So the range of information to have to make a solid decision, which would be the best decision you can make in the moment that you're in, between 40 and 70%. So for those of you who are my perfectionists out there, and I know there are a few of you, remember Colin Powell's 40-70 rule, because that 70 is what's going to keep you in your stuck spiral of you don't have enough, so it can't be perfect, and if it can't be perfect, we get judged. That spiral, that sounds familiar, right? You want to get comfortable knowing that if you have at least 70% of the information, you're going to make a pretty informed, pretty solid decision. And again, the key is you're making the right decision for the moment that you're in. Because this is life. We do not predict the future. We do not know all the outcomes. Sometimes we don't even know all the options. And this is just how life works. We did not predict 3 years ago that we were going to spend 2 years in a pandemic. We did not predict all the variations of this pandemic. Right? We can't predict when someone we love is going to get sick. We can't predict when our partner is going to break our heart. We can't predict when we're going to win the lottery. There are just things in life we don't know. When we are of the perfectionist bent, like a few of us are, we want to know. We want to control and plan for every outcome and every contingency. And we can't. Life just doesn't let us. We can try, but what happens is in the trying, we make ourselves crazy. And we go over that 70% rule, which means we also make ourselves stuck. We create safe and comfortable patterns, but they're not growth patterns. They don't get us where we want to go. They just keep us safe. So those are your decision-making tools for tonight that I wanted to leave with you. So just to go over this really quickly, there's your pro and con list. With your pro and con list, I highly recommend you scale each pro and each con, scale of 1 to 10 of how important it is to you versus not important versus super important on that 1 to 10 scale. So use the weighted scale if you're going to use a pro and con list. Go to your friends and family, get their input, but then step away from that perspective to figure out if that input works for you. And as Rose had said, make sure you have boundaries around it. They're not to tell you what to do, they're to offer their perspective about what you might do. Do your worst case scenario planning. So play it out. Play out your biggest fear when you make this decision and see if you can come up with a plan that helps you work through that. And are you comfortable with that plan? Are you comfortable with that level of risk? Was your worst case scenario fear even real? Because sometimes they're not even real. And once we break it out, we're like, oh, this is nothing. And we move on. Leverage the 5-5-5 rule, right? So especially if it's a timely issue, you've got to make a decision, you've got to make it quickly. Does this matter in 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? And finally, 5th, tap into your intuition. Listen to yourself. I am a big fan of actually do trust your gut. You have data points, use your data points, but you've also got to go with what aligns, and this is especially important if it is a moral or a value decision, what aligns with you and your integrity. And your bonus is Colin Powell's 40-70. All you need is 40% to 70% of the data, to make an informed decision that is your best choice for the moment that you're in. Okay, ladies, thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight. Lovely to see you all here. As always, if you are struggling with making a decision, if you are trying to figure out what you're doing next or where you're going, Dirty Girl Mini Dig is your offer. So 15-minute free coaching call, you and me, and all we're going to focus on is what's your challenge for today, what's that decision you have to make, what's that process you want to go through to get yourself to a clearer headspace so we can get you one step closer to your goal. So just drop the word dig in the chat below and I will reach out to you to schedule your free 15-minute coaching call. So drop the word mini dig. We're going to get you one step closer to your goals. And until then, my friends, I will see you. Well, I'll see you in between now and next Tuesday, but I will definitely be talking to you again. Oh, I won't be talking to you again next week. Oh my gosh, I was about to say that and I'm not. There will be no Training Tuesday next Tuesday. I apologize. I should have said so earlier. I'm going to start traveling next week, and so my travel schedule is a little wonky. So I will not be here for Training Tuesday next week, but I will be here the week after. So I will keep you guys posted, don't worry, and we will be chatting in the group over the next few days. Drop the word dig if you'd like to have a conversation. Otherwise, have a fabulous night, ladies.